Good morning, comrades. We are back for another one. This is going to be our Thursday show. I know what day it is.
Thursday.
It's Thirsty Thursday, as the bars like to call it. No?
Yeah, no,
every day
is.
is Thirsty Day for some of the folks in here. I don't know.
I'm trying a new thing that I'm doing exercise instead of drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're thirsty and drinking some water.
yes, hydro.
Yeah. Nice.
I'm on that intermittent fasting, so I'm like super pissed off all the time.
Yeah, so today we got Jeff,
Super angry.
we got Robert, and go ahead.
No, we got Robert.
and Aaron.
Yeah, we have Aaron. So
This,
we're going to figure this introductions thing out one of these
This is
days.
your Thursday Good Morning Comrades Socialist
Thursday
Podcast.
show. So, how's everybody doing? What's going on? Oh, but I guess I should announce some of the stuff. So, you can listen to us on WHIV-LP New Orleans, 102.3, every Tuesday. Every single Tuesday, you can check us out live on the air. Yeah, that's when they play these things. You can also check us out anywhere in the world online, WHIVFM.org/listen at 8 o'clock. You can also check out all of our episodes that go out through WHIV on our page. WHIVFM.org has little tabs for all of our shows now, and Good Morning Comrade just recently got one. So, how about that? We're expanding.
Pretty cool.
It's like the Blob. Like we're taking over the planet.
Is it the original one or the one from the 80s?
Which one's better?
I don't know. Neither are bad. The one from the 80s scared me when I was a little kid, though.
Okay,
The original was like definitely about the Red Menace.
No, 100% is.
Okay, so I'll take
job. Did you?
I know things.
So wait.
Did you read that somewhere? Or did you just get that?
Excuse you. I went to a liberal arts college.
I didn't know.
You can also check out our website, goodmorningcomrade.com. You can also check out the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram. Just look for us, Good Morning Comrade. Comrade Morning on Twitter. And then also Patreon, Good Morning Comrade. Give us your money.
Let me talk about that Patreon for a minute.
Talk about it.
So, we're imploring you to at least get on our dollar tier of Patreon. We don't have a reward for it. We'll have to come up with something.
Give us your ideas. Email us. Contact at goodmorningcomrade.com. What do you want us to talk about? Honestly, we could do a movie review of The Blob.
Maybe we should just do I don't know.
Blobs.
Should we? I was going to say we could do the corny thing that everybody does is the Discord. But we'll come up with something for the dollar tier. But let me tell you, we also have a $6 tier, which is going to go to Good Morning Comrade branded koozies when we get those. Yeah. We need enough people to give to that tier first, though, before we can get the koozie order out, because that's how bulk ordering works. And then we've got other merch, like T-shirts in the works.
Yeah, I've been talking to our guy, and as soon as we can get this thing to be union-made,
that's what it is. We're trying to get on union-made shirts.
So here's what we're doing. We're organizing a shop, and then we're going to get...
No, that's a good point. I mean, that's rad. That's putting praxis in motion. Mm-hmm. Put your praxis in motion.
So speaking of organizing, guess what the CWA AT&T workers are doing right now all across the Southeast?
Is it organizing?
They are on strike.
Yay!
They are on strike for unfair labor practices by AT&T, who is my cell phone provider, and guess what? They suck. But so there are over 25,000 workers. Let me look it back up. I'm gonna get this scale right. I really screw it up when it comes to commas and number identifying. But there's at least 500 folks from the city that, as of Monday, which is the day that we're recording, that are out on strike. We have some folks that are sort of in contact. I know that we here at Good Morning Comrade stand 100% in solidarity with all workers, with all striking workers. give it up for District 3, the Southeast District of the CWA, the AT&T workers. Holler if you hear me.
So for people who are not as familiar working with labor and working with strikes, what are some things that we should all be keeping in mind when interacting with a group that's striking? Like, what's good praxis? Like, I know don't cross a picket line, even though I knew that. Yeah. But like, what are some other things that we can be doing to support?
I don't know. Just sort of, if you happen to pass by a picket line, give it a honk. If you start walking by, I mean, if you have some time, maybe stand with them for a little bit, talk to some folks. But definitely don't go sort of like, don't do what is not like, don't do something that is going to like tick them off. And you sort of kind of have to play it by ear as you go there. But demonstrations of solidarity, sharing all of the news that they put out, sharing their messaging from their websites, that's a good way to sort of, show that there's public support behind their strike. And you keep an eye out for any sort of asks that they do have of the public. So if they say, oh, and this hasn't been done yet, but if there is sort of like a call to like cancel your, AT&T subscription or whatever, if you can do that, definitely do it. Just
social media is mostly trash, but this is what makes it not trash. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's check out all that kind of stuff on the Facebook and Twitter and all of that, so we can figure out how to help support these folks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty rad. So my man Bernard Sanders, he sent
20,000 workers.
He sent pizzas to the striking coal miners in Texas. Why?
Kentucky.
God, that's what I meant. I'm so sorry. Why am I thinking Texas? I don't know. But can you tell me why are the coal miners striking in Kentucky? So I almost said Texas again.
Well, we did do an episode. Scott and I did do an episode on this probably about a month ago, when this sort of thing was kind of all coming together. So there are a couple of mining companies essentially that decided that they were going to kind of close down operations, and as they closed down operations, they basically declared bankruptcy. And the short version is that I'm working from memory here. The short version is that they decided, oh, we're closed for business. You workers, don't expect your paychecks to be coming through. And then the workers decided that they were going to, rise up. They were going to block trains from leaving with the coal that they've already sort of mined and packed up and all that other stuff. And they're just sort of like having a good old time, playing cornhole on train tracks and, making up songs and barbecuing and doing all the things.
So this really isn't a strike. It's actually an occupation?
They're blocking the railroads. So that's what they've been doing for the past several weeks. It's actually, I mean, like I said before, it was probably been going on for a week when we first did that episode on it, and it's still happening as of the 26th of August. So it's keep it on rolling, keep it on trucking. So it's definitely solidarity with those workers that are out there. The owner of the former CEO of actually two of these companies, whose name escapes me at the moment, was putting together some kind of fancy resort that he was building up, and he had some really shady practices, sort of just passing money from one project to another, to his own personal accounts and all this other sort of shell game. So it was a real mess. CEOs. You know what we said on the ACAB thing on the last episode that we talked about? If you don't think that all cops are bastards, which, you can...
We had some pros and cons in the last one.
All CEOs are definitely bastards.
So, I don't know. I'm hearing all this stuff. I'm not super familiar with the history of labor in this country. I'm a little bit ashamed that I'm not as
Don't be ashamed.
Not familiar.
Don't be ashamed. It's intentionally suppressed.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So I studied abroad in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and that was circa 2008, potentially. Anyway, while I was there was a huge strike of farmers. And it was specifically, if I remember correctly, who knows if I am, they were protesting the tariffs on soybeans.
Mm-hmm.
And in protest, it wasn't like they just stopped farming soybeans. They just straight up blocked every food shipment from coming from kind of the outskirts of Buenos Aires into Buenos Aires, to the point where there just like wasn't meat, which if any of you have been to Argentina, that is like problematic, because meat is, I would say, probably like 95% of the national diet.
They love grilling in Buenos Aires.
Yes, I have a couple of pictures of myself and my friends in the grocery store at the meat cabinet, or the meat cases that are just full of soda and other things that were not meat. And it went on for, a solid amount of time. I was, in my early 20s then, so I did not feel particularly affected either way. But I think early 30s, Aaron would be feeling a lot of anxiety in that same situation. But it's just interesting how that was like, everyone was like, yeah, no, that's just, they're getting their, that's what they're doing. The workers are doing it. And we have such a panic, or we just don't hear about it in the U.S.
Yeah. And there was a really great line that Adolf Reed said at an event that he did here a year ago. And he said that in Europe, the capitalist class was, like after World War II, the capitalist class was spent because they essentially had spent all of their capital putting the war, and there was immense physical destruction all throughout the cities, and they needed to be rebuilt by workers. And in America, the capitalists made all kinds of money off of it. I'm saying it much less eloquently than he did, but essentially they came back fat and happy, and they attacked labor, and they essentially did all that they could to take it down. And it was a generation project from the 1940s to the 1970s and eventually the 80s. But they have essentially they were successful in their project of attacking and defanging a lot of labor unions that existed within the U.S. They did it through sort of like the anti-communism Red Scare sort of tactics that push people, essentially banish the established leadership, sometimes more. And again, I don't want to get too hyperbolic and too sort of like union leadership, but like there was a dynamic that was created within the society that if you were like a communist or a socialist, or you could be associated with those people, then you would be essentially like non-American or against America or something like that. And that was something that was used as an excuse to discredit large amounts of people, and mostly these socialist communist types. And they were the key organizers in the labor unions. And there's been this big split between the left and labor ever since. And there's a specific reason that is a split that does exist. And the question now becomes, you can know why it happened, but the important thing is, how do you sort of bring the labor and the left back together? And that's an interesting question that I think about all the time. And there's much sharp disagreement on the left for that, and a lot of it is sort of done outside of where labor spaces are. Not all of it, but some of it. Some of the more like theoretical academic approaches of it can be a little bit removed from it. Not always, but it's a real complicated sort of mess that sort of it's a Gordian knot that needs to be solved.
Well, so also along with that, I wonder if that has a lot to do, because, we talk about boomers here a lot, and boomer memes and things, but boomers were specifically the children of returning vets from World War II. And, having grown up with that kind of language around communism and socialism, I wonder if that contributes to some of the generational, leftist right divide of, us millennials, who apparently are 14, according to boomers, even though I'm a millennial and I'm 32. But I guess every time they talk about me, it seems like they think I'm like in my early teens.
I've been working for 20 years. I'm so like...
Yeah. No, but so that's the interesting thing, is because I think, these conversation around boomers and millennials, it's like, I view boomers as being like, I think a lot older than they actually are. And I think boomers view us as, or me, like, y'all are boomers, right? You're no, boomers. Rob Robert, maybe.
I was born in 1984. That sort of like falls into the.
No, Robert is early millennial.
That's a millennial. Yeah.
He's the first millennial.
Yes, the very first. But I'm curious. Like, I'm thinking about that a lot lately. He's so mad at me right now.
He's so dumb and pedantic. No, we're doing class war, not age war. Okay, like that's what Lord Bernie has said to do. Class war. We're not fighting because old people like to go to Perkins and they like to go to Bojangles and what's the cafeteria? Morrison's still around? I don't know, but anyway, that's irrelevant. Going back to what you said, Jeff. And I don't want to get into Hassan Piker territory and be like, we deserve what happened to us in World War II. Because you know that whole thing where he's so stupid. Hassan Piker is like the biggest.
Who's that?
Oh, he's Cenk Uger's nephew.
And what did he do?
He was on Twitter and he was like, we deserve. You are not. Why am I doing a country accent, like a hillbilly accent for him? But he's like, the U.S. deserved what happened to it on 9/11. And now he's like banned off of Twitter because of that, and he had to like do a whole like mea culpa sit down with Uncle Cenk, and like do a sorry not sorry. It was so stupid where he could have just said the United States caused 9/11, like the things are a foreign policy, like 9/11 was a reaction to it. Sort of yeah, he could have said that, but he used the word deserve. But anyway,
yeah.
My original point was, yeah, I've heard that argument before from historians because I'm a big like. Two things I'm like into. Three things I'm into: NASCAR racing, World War II, Vietnam War, and the whole reason we have an American empire is because the United States escaped World War II with all of our infrastructure intact, where the rest of the world didn't. And again, like. Don't want to go into Hassan Piker territory. Like, yeah, it's great that we weren't affected. Like, American people did not have to feel the brunt of that war at home. But not having our infrastructure affected was kind of the worst. Like, simultaneously the best and the worst thing that could have happened as the outcome of that war. Because, like you said, it gave capitalists the avenue to break labor.
And the thing that
which didn't happen in Europe.
The thing that capital doesn't want to do is they don't want to invest in commons. They want to create the situation because there's a reason that the capitalists were discredited in the first place, which was that in the entire 18th century there was the whole robber baron phenomenon with the giant oil magnates and steel magnates and the railroads and this just giant like tower of these like oligarchs that existed within the U.S. and it was. To say it was discredited is probably an overstatement. But the fact that kind of a rampant, it's like inequality in distribution of resources led to the labor unions sort of coming up and sort of workers standing in there and standing up for themselves and fighting for their interests. It's just that it's happening again.
And I also want to state I stated 3 boomer activities as things that I like to spend my time with. Auto racing, especially NASCAR, and World War II and Vietnam War history. Those are boomer activities. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm not a boomer. I'm a millennial. So get that out of your head.
He's a millennial that acts like a boomer.
He's a Gen X millennial cusp. So
no, not even close.
You're closer to Gen X than Boomer.
Gen X is not even close. Gen X is like 15 years like older.
No, Boomer and Gen X. It goes Boomer, Gen X,
Google,
millennial.
Look it up. No.
Yeah,
Beto is Gen X.
I was hoping that this would turn into an age cohort.
Hold on.
Who is what fight.
Keep talking nonsense so I can look this up.
Can y'all
You're such a millennial. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have all this technology in your hands and you refuse to use it.
I'm sorry. I'm using it, but I'm texting and not looking up the thing that you told me to look up.
I'm just using the information that's in my brain that is correct.
Which is wrong. Okay, here we go. Gen X. Born 1965 to 1980. That is
okay,
not
so what
me.
is Boomer?
Boomers are born 1946 to 64.
Okay, he just tried to sit here and tell us all.
No, because don't put me with Gen X. Gen X, I'm not a Gen X. I'm a millennial. But I'd rather you call me a boomer because Gen X's are the worst.
That is.
I don't want to steal. I don't want to Chapo Trap House did a whole thing about this of why this is. So I don't want to steal content from them and copyright bite them. But they did a whole thing in try to be as succinct as possible. That at least boomers rage out on boomers fought World War II. Boomers rage out. Boomers were in Vietnam. Boomers rage out on social media. Boomers, they're on Facebook. They're crazy. They're building gated communities. They're flying blue Lives Matter flags. The whole bit. Millennials are leading the way. They're gonna if the world
lead the way in avocado toast.
Yeah, if the world doesn't end, it's going to be because of millennials and they're able to change systemic problems here in the U.S. Gen Xers have done nothing. They are the lost generation. All they did was sit around and look at Gen X media, 30 something, the show 30 something back in the day when we were kids. I was a latchkey kid, spent a lot of time at home, so I watched a lot of nighttime ABC television. Shit Empire Records, all those bullshit ass.
Records.
Oh, I'm so depressed, man.
My ennui, can't you see it?
Oh God.
I have mentioned Empire Records in this very podcast before as the thing that made me understand Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it,
None of the
it's
girls-
a cult.
Whoa, okay.
None of the girls that I want to fuck me. Boo hoo hoo.
So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Empire Records, it's a cult classic, available on Netflix, I believe, that is about an independent record store in some unknown town that is trying to fight corporate takeover. So that's kind of that's the main. It's they're fighting the man. A person, one of the workers, steals all of the money I'm laughing, it's so ridiculous. Steals all of the money out of the safe, goes to Atlantic City, attempts to make all of the money in order to buy back the store from this record label, does it, but then tries just one more roll, loses all of it, somehow doesn't get fired. Okay, so he's still there they're just oh, that's just whatever the fuck his name is. And then there's another subplot where two girls are into the same guy and one of them sleeps with him and they send her home for that. But the guy who literally stole money out of the safe and gambled it away is somehow still
this
there.
Is the height of Gen. No, I was gonna say this is the height of Gen X culture, but it's not. You know what the height of Gen X culture is? Fucking hate musicals so much, and the one that I hate more than any. Well, there's two musicals I hate more than any. The first one is Cabaret, because if you fucking idiots would have been punching Nazis instead of hanging out in the cabaret, you wouldn't be in the cabaret crying, getting wait to take train rides to concentration camps. Second of all,
Hot take.
When I fucking
Cabaret
hate
take.
fucking Rent. Rent is the height of Gen X, quote unquote, air quote, culture. It's so garbage.
I haven't seen either
I
of
dated
these.
this girl once who was super, super hot, and she was really into Rent, and I paid $150 to off Broadway Rent, and I was like, oh my God. I was watching this, and I just couldn't believe this was a thing that people enjoyed. It was so awful. It was all these trust fund kids who are
I think we struck a nerve here.
all these trust fund kids who are oh, I don't want my mom writes me a check and I live in New York, but I don't want to pay the rent, but I don't have a real job and I need another check from mom. That's literally one of the things where he's his mom, he's annoyed that the musical opens, he's annoyed that his mom is calling him. He's I don't want to talk to my mom, but he's can you send me another check? Mm-hmm. And one of the songs is we don't want to pay the rent, and then there's something of poor people, and they're oh yeah, well we don't want to pay the rent either. Forget you, just sleep in the cold.
So they're middle class people.
It's so awful.
So that sort of pushes to a point to me where is this a generational issue, or is this more of a class issue, across the board? And that's sort of who is like the loudest, I guess, in that class, or in that sort of age cohort, rather.
It's like the Gen Xers, like the late Gen Xers, are upset that they missed out on the excesses of the 80s. So you've got, like, we're mad because we missed out on the excesses of the 80s, plus that whole, like, grunge, like, coffee shop culture. Like, that's what Gen Xers are.
So it's both, but it's the way we're conceptualizing, like, the representatives of each of these age groups are specifically, like, middle class to upper middle class white people. Because, you know, there's a lot of the kind of core characteristics they're not across the board, like racially, they're not across the board economically. Like, specifically, I remember speaking to one of my friends who, he's a first generation Ethiopian guy, and first generation American, his parents are Ethiopian. He was saying one thing that he didn't get involved with Occupy Wall Street was specifically because of a lot of the ways that participants were talking about it was they promised us that we would do better than our parents. And that's not available for us. And so we're rioting. And he said, you know, as an immigrant, as a black person, as a poor person, I was never, ever promised that things were going to be better for my parents. I was told it was going to be a slog
so
all day, every day.
Occupy Wall Street essentially was in the question, or at least the rhetoric that came from it.
Yeah, I think because a lot of it, I think it was just the people who were kind of at least the figureheads of it, or at least the kind of main spokespeople were
the most visible.
Yeah, tended to be kind of white guys of a certain, like, that age. And there was a lot of talk around, they're rioting because this idea, like, this upward mobility that has been promised to us. They're sitting in the park. Well, you know what I mean. That's a riot on Wall Street, I guess. But it was this idea that upward mobility was promised to us, and we are not able to achieve it anymore. And upward mobility was not promised to the majority of the country. So a lot of these kind of, like, generational divides, like, specifically also, you know, like the idea of the boomers sitting on their Facebook, like, and just tweeting out. That's people who have retired, who have time to do that. There's a lot of people in this country who have not had time, who don't have enough money to retire. So they don't have time to be sitting on their Facebook. Go to Walmart and check in your group. Yeah. So I think it's generational, but it's specifically generational of a subset.
It's like the middle upper class of those generations, of all of those generations.
Yeah.
Including millennials probably more spread out because access to information is a lot broader now than it was in the 80s and it was in the 70s and the prior.
I guess if I was to boil it down into one sentence, I would say my beef with Gen Xers are that
fight me, Gen X.
Gen Xers, they have the same value sets as boomers. Like, all the things that we dislike about boomers, they have the same ideas, but they still want to be cool. They want to be like, oh man, like, yeah, they want to be. They were like the beginnings of the
button your fly, man.
They were the beginnings of, like, the Silicon Valley, like the tech guy, like the tech bros. Yeah. The early tech bros were like Gen Xers, who they had the same kind of. It's the same kind of worship of capital. And
Elon Musk is like Jeff Bezos is probably.
But they want to be like, but they don't want to be like their dads, even though they're exactly like their dads. Actually, they're not even exactly like their dads. Their dad's cooler than them because their dad's not hiding the ball. Your dad's like, they're like, fuck you. Their dad's like Clint Eastwood. Like, this is who I am. I don't give a shit. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, but like these guys, these Gen Xers, are just like, man, I don't understand why can't you just be cool? Like, you know, I'm making money. Why can't you? Like, that kind of thing.
So, I guess the next sort of, like, logical question is, like, what are I guess in terms of what, like in terms of how it's possible for people to become, like, new billionaires or whatever. Like, what about the next, like, the millennials that are going to be, like, bazillionaires that are going to be, like, how are they going to sort of style themselves, you know? Because that's sort of a question that's open. That's something to get, like, pissed about in advance already and, like, predictably pissed off. Like, oh my god, like, I hate this millennial billionaire who's already posting and, like.
I I think that there's probably going to be a lot of people inheriting, obviously. But,
Yeah, that's true too.
I'm like wondering how this new
Meghan McCain is the millennial.
Oh my god, is Meghan McCain a millennial? Is she a millennial?
Yeah. How old is she?
Look it up. She's like.
Is she also a Gen X millennial cusp like Robert?
That's a thing. Like, there was a time I had this.
Indigo, like people like that, like the fucking millennial elites are all Nazis. And
I'm really interested. Look that up. I want to know where she sits because there was this time where I thought that Meghan McCain was like the most dangerous person on earth because she had her. I used to listen to her radio show. I used to hate listen to it, but she'd be like, "Hey guys, like I like the gays." Like
she
my
had
best
a radio show.
Oh yeah. It was like on the same channel with like Art Bell. Like they would talk about like ghosts and stuff. Like whatever your like right wing station is.
She's 34.
Oh, so she's definitely a millennial.
Solid millennial. She's
wow,
the same age
she's
as me.
Solid, dude.
And
So
she's done much less than me in life, but she has so much more
I thought
money
she
than
was
me.
so much older, to be honest. I thought she was like in her 40s minimum. Just
Hate
the way
makes her
she
look
acts,
bad.
like my father.
Oh my
I really
God.
thought.
Y'all,
Yeah.
Karen knows no age. I need that.
That's a great point.
Karen
That's
is
great.
ageless.
But yeah, I thought
Again-
she was like super dangerous because she would have a radio show and she would be like, her radio show was, I like the gays, like my best friend's gay, and she would say, oh look, here's my bumper music, it's Beyonce, like all the single ladies, and then she would say, I just want my taxes lower, and I'm like, that's dangerous because she's trying to like normalize this fucking GOP shit.
I think when John McCain died, like her brain just snapped, and like she was always garbage.
Well, she literally, you know why she's 100% garbage? And like, Aaron, tell me if I'm out of line. She married a guy who met her, he negged her, and that like put her on the hook. He's like, oh yeah, you're ugly, like you're this, you're that, and then finally like he negged her. You didn't know this?
No.
Yeah, I
Ooh,
did
we
know.
got to
He
do
was
a
like
deep
the guy
dive
who was
on
the
that.
writer for the Federalist, right?
Deep
He's like one of the
dive on
editors
that.
in the Federalist. I can't remember this stupid.
Well, now you're
guy's
making me
name.
feel bad for her. She clearly has bad self-esteem.
Well,
I don't care about it.
Ben Dominant, that's this guy's name.
But the good thing is, like, I don't think she's an existential threat anymore to like life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Because as soon as she got that gig on The View, she like completely, and like you said,
She
I
showed
think
her whole ass.
She completely told on herself. Like that other lady, who's the other conservative lady who just shuts up. I can't think of her name.
I don't know. I don't watch this.
Yeah, but she's more dangerous than Meghan McCain just because she's just like, I just want people to be like okay, like this is not the way things go. But Meghan McCain's like, nobody should have anything, nobody should have health care, blah 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 blah. Don't take my money, and she just comes off like as a terrible human. To where I think like even 5 years before that gig, that View gig, she did not come off like that. She came off as like, this is the new hip GOP. This ain't your dad's GOP
They keep
anymore.
trying to do this though, because remember when they tried to do that with like Megyn Kelly and all these other like weirdos too?
Well,
I
they
mean,
tried to
Megyn
do
Kelly
that.
was supposed to be just hot, right? I didn't think
Well,
she was supposed to be like
she was definitely supposed not so maybe not, but like she sort of had this like I'm real talking to you.
Well, I mean,
And
that's
this
all
is-
like Ben, what's his face, and Ben Shapiro, and
Yeah.
all those like Twitter guys. That's 100% what that is.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, it's like, oh, meme culture. The left can't meme, and I'm, it's trying to make everything hip, but
Or like it's like this sort of like art of like theatrical domination, like Ben Shapiro wrote a book like how to debate and destroy like leftists or whatever.
I don't know. It kind of reminds, it's like going back to this like generational divide. I've been listening to this podcast about Woodstock '99 and just like what a shit show it was. But I see a lot of parallels between kind of the crowd at Woodstock '99 and then these like Twitter conservatives who are just trying to like, own the libs just for the sake of owning the libs. It's like this weird displacement of anger. And I don't know. I think it's, again, and we've talked about this before, but it's this idea of like this reaction to change and having to include more viewpoints. And apparently, like at Woodstock '99, they were mad because Sheryl Crow was there, and they didn't want to like. And then but it was also like a lot of the anger was
Apparently, they didn't want to soak up the sun.
apparently not, but like a lot of the anger was specifically against the fact that they thought like, oh, we want. Our music isn't as hardcore anymore. MTV is taking over our music and making it into this like commercialized thing, right? So that's like what they were angry about. So they rioted at Woodstock. So now we have like the Ben Shapiros of the world who are upset at, not being told that they're special all the time just because they're a white guy who went to college, or you know, the fact that people bring up the fact that he inherited all of his money and so didn't actually work for it all the time, and it's this like reaction to that, and so it's just like kind of anger and lashing out.
Now I do see a distinction between those two things, though. Sort of with the Woodstock '99, just the way they presented it, I'm sure it's much more nuanced than you just sort of like summed it up in a couple of words. But like the idea of sort of like this MTV-ification of everything, and sort of like this obvious like essentially cashing in on and sort of like hollowing out of a culture is something that is like truly terrifying. Right?
Well, sure. So that's like a real true fear, and that I would have like a lot more empathy for. But the idea that like Korn was somehow the counterculture, or like Limp Bizkit, specifically like Limp Bizkit, it like was one of the ones that like brought up the it's this idea that it is counterculture, that like that honestly, like, I mean, not to go on like a feminist rant, but like things that are kind of feminine and women like are inherently worse or inherently sell out, or you know, whatever you want to say, because it's like also, you having to include different viewpoints, like the idea that you would have to like share your edgy MTV with like Britney Spears was enough to make a bunch of dudes riot. Yeah, right.
That makes sense. That makes more sense.
The whole thing. I mean, and like, obviously there's a lot of other things that made them riot.
Like, and the idea that like Korn and like maybe less so Korn, but definitely like Limp Bizkit would ever find any popularity without MTV.
No, that's like the most interesting thing. It's just like very.
Like, I can see Korn popping up like elsewhere, but like
Jonathan Davis seems like chill. I like him.
A good analogy is something I ran into.
I was doing a lot of Korn back in those days.
Well, it's like these a lot of these back to my Disney addiction. A lot of these like
every episode
bullshit man babies
drink folks
are talking about these Star Wars movies and how bad they are, and I don't like them either. And I don't like the new Star Wars movies. I don't like. But
do you feel compelled to talk about how much you hate them?
Here's the thing. It's okay. So if you pick out any of these random YouTube channels, because I spend most of the time, like, if I'm not playing video games, I'm on YouTube. And you pick out these random YouTube... you pick out these genders. These random YouTube channels due to, like, how their critique of Star Wars and how much they don't like the new Star Wars. And I'm like, it's not good because of this. The Han Solo movie, I didn't like that. Even though I like Lando Calrissian's like one of my favorite characters, blah, 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 blah. I didn't like it. You're not missing anything. But then it always boils down to Disney is infected Star Wars with feminism. It always boils down to that. So whatever their decent argument was, they're mad because a lady has a lightsaber.
Right. And it's got nothing to do with, even if you do grant that the story sucks.
Right.
Like, that's a ridiculous conclusion.
And I saw a video today. This guy, he was crying about the exact same thing. It took him longer than most. It took him to like
video.
It was like a 20-minute video about how the new Star Wars movie is going to be garbage. Blah blah blah. But it took him about 4 minutes, which is longer than most, to get down to I hate women and that therefore Star Wars is bad. And he had all these Star Wars toys in his little studio all around him. And I commented on his on his YouTube video, and I said, it's almost like a lighthearted movie about space wizards wasn't made for the entertainment of a grown ass man.
Well,
and I'm just like, dude, at some point you just have to be like, I don't like them. That's fine, but like you're sitting here and you're like super angry about this as if anybody gives a shit. Like, to be honest, it would be more if this huge vocal community of people who are super, super into this, same thing with Woodstock, if they saw Sheryl Crow, if they were really against Sheryl Crow, if they really didn't want to see the Star Wars with the lady, it would have made more of an impact if they just didn't buy a ticket than to be like, I'm super angry and mad about it, because companies know at least you're super angry and mad. You're mad enough to make a YouTube video. It's
like the wrestling
so they don't give a damn.
It's like the wrestling thing, like a cheer or a boo. They're both a reaction.
Right. It was another video I saw. It's like cheap. What was it? It was Heat versus Go Away Heat. It was
Go Away Heat's everybody sitting down and they just like don't even like listen to it. You know, it's
Yeah.
like everybody's just tired.
But
of
at
it.
some point, the company can't tell the difference. All they're hearing is boos, and they're like, "Oh, you got a reaction? That's good." So if these people were really, it's the same thing when I say about like I've always said the whole men's rights thing, and then you've got that segment of men's rights. I know I'm going off on a tangent.
So talk a little bit about what men's rights is. And set the table
I don't even know if I can. Like it's dudes are saying
it's a response to feminism.
Yeah.
Like essentially like existing in the culture. And I'm definitely doing the simplified version.
I wouldn't even say it's a response to feminism because there's some in the very center of that like toxic like acorn, like the very seed. There's some good points, but then you lacquer it in bullshit. Aaron has a lot.
I have a lot to say about the men's rights
And I
movement.
didn't mean to intercept your point, but
My issue was, and let's get into that. We're gonna circle back, but that way I can just finish this. So it's not weird later. The whole thing of the MGTOW, which is a segment of it, men going their own way. Well, if you're going your own damn way, why are you telling me about it? Get out of here! And to be honest, and the thing is, if you want to talk about men going their own way or people going their own way, the ironic thing is, if you were really doing that and not complaining about women, that's more attractive to women. Because if you're a straight guy and like they're like, oh, look at him, he's got his own hobbies, he's got stuff going on, he's not super fucking
it's more like I don't care and listen to how much I don't care.
And that's what I'm saying.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's not correct to think that. So they talk a lot about women, but nothing about the men's rights movement is actually about women. But so specifically, men's rights started ostensibly out of the idea of fathers' rights, the idea that idea that men were, that women, again, that women were, family court, that men were at a disadvantage always, that women would get the kids, that women could do no wrong in the family sphere. So that was kind of like where it started, and it's definitely morphed into a very toxic.
And there's a reason for that too.
Yeah. Well, so I mean that's the thing. So I've talked about my feminism before, and a lot of the stuff they're worried about, feminists are worried about too, because the idea that a woman would be automatically better suited to be a parent is like a deeply patriarchal idea, and so it's this idea that like women or men are not like inherent to parenthood and yada yada. But kind of going back to this conversation we were having about, we were talking about Disney and we're talking about Woodstock and we're talking about the Twitter and things. We are, but it's this idea that there are deeper issues at work, but we are only talking about surface level things often. So instead of there being a deep conversation about like why can't men and boys connect with a female character, why is that so foreign to them, instead we're having a fight against there should be more girls, like feminine, like kind of like capitalist feminists on one side saying like representation, like we need to have more women in Star Wars, and then
queen.
and then men saying no, I'm not, like it's ruining the story, and it's like there's a deeper conversation, and it's silly, and that's why it feels silly. And so representation does matter, and like the idea that men and boys can't connect with female characters does matter, but we're managing to pretend like we're doing something, but not actually getting anything done, because we need to go through the deeper levels. And it's that idea. It's like Disney. It's a Disneyfication of these like deep, intense social issues.
Yeah, and it's almost like there's a emphasis on the domination side of it. And I hate to be like by both sides, but that is sort of the thing. Like the sort of response to women bad is like more women just piling on, and it's just like it's like a fight of attrition.
Yeah.
And there's no other sort of everything is a point that you have to win on the schoolyard, and it's over if you don't.
And I mean, to go with a deeper conversation about it, it's not even necessarily about like women versus men. It's this idea of masculinity versus femininity.
Right.
Because there are a lot of feminine men and there's a lot of masculine women, but it's this idea that, like Amy Klobuchar pops into my head whenever I think about this, because if y'all aren't familiar, she was, a lot of news stories came out that she's been a very abusive boss, that she's, just a really unpleasant person to work with, bordering on like making EOC complain. but it's this idea. I saw a lot of feminists coming out, like specifically Gen X feminists, to like really bring it all around, saying, well, you know, she's just as effective as men. Yeah. She's this, she's that. Like she's strong.
Well, in that logic, in that sort of like capitalist framework, that is correct.
Yeah.
But it's not like in terms of. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm jumping.
Well, no, but yeah, it's like this idea that like a woman can be just as masculine as a man, but the idea should be, well, why is masculinity like the best way to lead? Right. Like, why is aggressiveness, or you know, kind of the traditional like negative aspects of masculinity, why are those the best? Whereas like some of the aspects of femininity aren't considered as valuable.
It's very reductionist.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's. I get into these conversations like, because I do think representation matters, and I like seeing, you know, represent like someone who looks like me on screen. I like that, but I do worry that like these kind of Disney fights, or you know, any sort of, you know, even just like adding, it's like, oh, they added a G.I. Jane to the G.I. Joe, whatever anyone's upset about.
Why can't they have a Lady Rambo?
Yeah, that worries me. And again, it's like this pressure valve. We've talked about this before, but it's this idea that like you can feel like you're doing something, you can, and not have to have deeper conversations about like what you as a feminine person, how you like interact with the world, what you like, how you as a masculine person interact with the world. It's like we're not even we need to have these conversations, and we're not doing it.
Yeah, and it's important to not have
my feelings about it.
It's important to not have the conversations with the MGTOWs and the freaking, you know, incels and all the other sort of like super like hyper strong groups. Those people are already gone. Yeah. Right. But like so where in the culture could you sort of like, target's the wrong word, but sort of like focus in terms of like having these conversations and potentially changing people's minds? That's an interesting question to me.
Yeah, I mean, as a teacher, like classroom.
Yeah.
It's
de-emphasize gender as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying like, oh, you can't wear pink if you're a girl, you can't wear blue if you're a boy, but it's this idea, you know, that boys are often told to man up.
Right.
Be the little man of the house. You know, you can't cry.
Like
you can't.
Early socialization.
Yeah. So a lot of that is really important. I mean, better minds than mine have thought about this, and I don't know that we've come up with like a truly good.
There's no perfect. Because in order, even if it's something again is theoretically perfect, you know, if people in the society don't pick it up, it ain't worth nothing.
Yeah.
If it's not appealing to like people, you can't convince people to, you know, follow these ideas that you have. Then what good is your idea? You know, that's sort of like a general thing that when it comes back to the conversation about the all cops are bastards thing, sort of like if you're turning, you know, people off in terms of these conversations, then you're doing yourself a disservice and a damage. And I think that's the point you were trying to make.
Yeah, I'm not. This is like something I'm always thinking about, and I'm worried. I worry very deeply about the way we talk about stuff, and I don't know that my thoughts are always coherent about it. And you know, I change from day to day on like what I feel like should be done or how we should have these conversations. Just because it's like, yeah, there is no one way. I'm not an expert, and again, like the same thing. It's like you meet people and you're like, oh, okay, well, how would a conversation with this person go? And you know, it might be different
today on this day when it's like, raining and they have no, you know, they look like they're punchy today, so maybe
it's
not
tough.
today,
so
you know?
Yeah, it's just something I don't feel like I'm ever really consistent about it, but it's something
you don't have to
worry.
be.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess
worry
the
about
sort
it.
of like underlying sort of the underlying approach, sort of like what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it is important, but sort of like how you engage on a day-to-day basis has got to be contextually like it's got to be contextualized to the sort of like immediate situations.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like you guys are so much smarter than me because
False.
You guys are just like you're thinking about this at such a deep level, like it's so much better than I could ever think about it. And my thing is just on the surface level, it's like these people obviously have so many issues. God knows, so many neuroses because they're having legitimate issues about a thing that's made for babies. Like,
that's the other
like your
thing,
favorite
too.
thing is made for babies, and you're mad because the lay's in it. You're mad because a woman is playing Woodstock because somehow you think that Korn is the end all be all of rock music, which is just what?
I shouldn't have said Korn. Korn is
Whatever.
good. I like really Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
Let's not put that on Jonathan Davis. Let's put that on Fred Durst, y'all.
They did crossover work though. They did do crossover work.
Yeah.
But I will defend Korn. Anyway, that's not the important thing though. I do think though the question of nostalgia and like specifically like with things with Star Wars or like it's really big with Star Wars right now. The idea that something that was written 30 years ago necessarily sort of like has to always stay the same no matter how much of it, like how much new of that story comes out, or like the idea that the fact that people are so precious to a bunch of movies that came out before most of them were born, the way that they'll just like hop up and defend it. It's almost just that I don't believe it's about the specific media that they're speaking of, and just using that as a vehicle to push through their opinions and their fucking misogyny or whatever. That's sort of like where I come down on it, and prove to me otherwise.
So I'm not going to be like that strong in my condemnation of it. I just feel like, it's this idea that if something is changing, it means that there was something wrong with it in the first place. And the idea that something
the times just changed.
Well, the times change, but then it's also, what if you still feel that way? So it's like, what if I'm trying to be, I'm not even going to try and reference, don't know anything about any of all this. But the idea that like, something that you thought was perfect is clearly not perfect, and the reason was because it was like misogynistic, or it didn't. Even if it wasn't misogynistic, it just didn't have a lot of women. Like it didn't pass the Bechdel test. Yeah, which if you don't know is if there's in a movie,
it's pass-fail.
Yeah, it's pass-fail. It's two female characters speaking to each other about something other than a man, and many movies fail even currently.
Yeah, and it's like there's questions about how the Bechdel test is utilized, but like it's a pretty low standard.
It's like a super low standard. Yeah. But yeah, so the idea that like something would have to change about something that you kind of base a lot of your like, I don't know that every Star Wars fan is basing a lot of their identity, but clearly someone who's making a YouTube video about it feels strongly.
I have 97,000 Boba Fett costumes, and
that's the way I'm looking at it, is from like a guy who's read a lot of comic books, where there's different comic books change so often to where you get different authors, different writers, different artists, and this version of Superman is going to be different a year from now than the one you're reading, and there's so many different continuities and different storylines, and you just ignore the ones you don't like, and you like the ones that you like.
There's a difference between like when some guy from the 60s is writing Batman, and when Frank Miller decides to write Batman.
And it's just like these dudes who they're spending so much time on something that they say they hate. Just like we talked about, like you were like, you're going to come over and watch SummerSlam or watch WWE?
Whatever,
I'm like, nah, I'm done with it.
Okay.
Like, that's it. Like, I'm done with it for real. Like, I don't want to see it. NFL, same way. I'm not like, fuck the NFL. I'm just like, I'm done. I don't want to watch it. And that's the thing. I remember when I worked at Citibank, and before I sold mortgages, I did the customer service thing. And one of the things they taught us was, as a corporation, there's no such thing as, like, if somebody's angry, that's a chance, it's an opportunity for change. And what they meant by that was, somebody's happy with you, that's great, like wonderful, they're happy with you, they're going to tell your friends, bank with us, whatever. If somebody's mad at you, they care enough about this organization to be mad about it. That's a customer that you can easily get back. The people who just go, I don't like it, and you never hear from them again, that's the worst. Because you'll never hear from them again.
They're disengaged.
Yeah, they're disengaged. And like, so if you really want to make a statement, just disengage. Like, I'm a guy who takes pop culture things like very seriously, and I love to hear about lore and story and this and that. So I spend my time watching these things, and for you to be like, oh, it's this Star Wars has been cucked, yo, Disney cucked it, and I'm just like, why do we even have to go there? Like, if you feel that strongly about it, just turn it off. It's so annoying. It's just.
Well, then, do you think that maybe we're missing potential conversations with people because they clearly care, and so we can have a discussion about, do they care about the media itself, or do they care about like that time and place? And if
it depends
so,
on,
like what do they care about?
I think it depends on the sort of individual situation, and again, it's hard. It's hard and sometimes not worth time to kind of parse through, all this noise that kind of comes through some of these various outlets. So I mean, if you want to determine like which one of the
I don't know that I am really gonna be the one they turn to discuss the ins and outs of the Star Wars
I'm not even
universe.
necessarily saying like you yourself, but like if somebody who's listening,
you dear listener, decide that you want to watch every I hate the girl Star Wars cup shit, whatever.
The thing is,
and you want to determine which one is like the one that you can approach and be reasonable with. God bless, go ahead. I don't have high hopes for you, but
again, I hate to be like, this is super shitty because like people should like what they like, and it's good to like bad things, like it's fine. But
I love bad things.
This goes into my like super nerdiness. These people are upset about something that was literally made for babies. Literally, it was made for babies. Every one of these dumb Star Wars things has a hook to get children to buy toys.
BB-8.
Yeah, they're 2-hour toy advertisements. The Ewoks, the little teddy bears.
I love the Ewoks.
Yeah, I love them too. I'm saying you can't love them. I'm just saying you're mad about something that's not even made for you. And I'm saying it's not even Star Trek. I mean, it's not. If you want to sit down and you want to break down the new Star Trek Discovery, honestly, that makes more sense than trying to break down a children's Space Wizard movie.
We thought this Wawa Sheets Bucky's was gonna get hot, but he's coming in with a Star Trek for
it's
Star
not
Wars.
Even Star Trek.
Woo!
What are we talking about? All right, we're on
So let's get out of here. You can listen to us every Tuesday at 8:00 in the morning. The show is called Good Morning Comrade on WHIV 102.3 FM in New Orleans. You can also check us out online, whivfm.org/listen. Check out our past episodes. You can do that in two places. You can check us out on whiv.org and just check out our page in there, or you can check out goodmorningcomrade.com. We're on all the iTunes and whatever that way. You can also check out Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Good Morning Comrade. Also Patreon. Talk about the Patreon.
A dollar will get you, a minimum of $1 will get you on our Patreon. We'll shout you out in the episode. I just came up with a tier right now. That's how we'll do it. What's the tier? We'll shout you out.
Oh yeah.
So if you want to plug something, we'll plug it for you for $1.
Reviews on the thing
absolutely.
Leave us a review and we'll read it on the air. In fact, I was looking at a couple of them.
But I can tell you real quick, and before I get off the Patreon, $6 koozie tier, $1 will shout you out and plug stuff. All that money will go towards advertising to get the pod in front of more people's ears. That's where it goes right now. Okay.
What were you in front of your ears. I was hoping you would vamp for a little bit longer so I could pull that up.
Totally do that. I can rant about. Since you're still pulling it up, hey, let's see. Oh, hold on real quick. Now I
need a vamp.
I'm on my phone. Here we go.
Wait. So here we go.
Breaking news.
What's the
new Monmouth poll out today? Bernie Sanders 20%.
Elizabeth Warren
20%. Joe Biden 19%. Bernie is now
retired.
Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are now leading in a very well-respected poll. It's also a YouGov poll, which is showing the same thing. This is fantastic. I am a super fan of Crystal Ball from the Terrible Name. Awesome journalist from The Hill. she tweeted out that poll. She goes, breaking news, 80% of the registered Democrats hate Bernie Sanders. And I was like, she's hilarious. She's the best. Joe Biden is sliding.
I have 3 5-star reviews. We're 5.0 rating on iTunes. So 5 stars from Higgins Goin' OM.
Ooh.
As a true moderate, I found this podcast accessible, informative, and interesting slate on both current and historical events. I'm glad that we appeal to true moderates. That's what we were going for when we call the show Good Morning Comrade. DJ Nola Bounce. If you're looking for a leftist podcast that feels like you're hanging with your friends, this is a great one. Hey!
Ooh.
And then from Salitos, 5 stars. You should check it out. So that's the people have spoken.
They love
and
us.
You can also do that on the iTunes and all the stuff. We have 8 5-star ratings. Keep giving us 5 stars and keep saying stuff. You can also email your love mail to us at contact@goodmorningcomrade.com. So yeah, anything else anybody wants to throw in?
Aaron.
Please don't flame me for my discussion on Star Wars, Star Trek, and also men's rights. I'm really worried. Be nice to me.
Flame me. I can take it, bro. Anyway, that's it for this episode. GoodMorningComrade.com. Love you. Bye.
Bye.